No one noticed when the old woman entered the emergency room. The ER was already loud, stretchers rolling fast, monitors beeping non-stop, voices overlapping in sharp commands. Nurses moved with practiced urgency. Doctors spoke without looking up. Everyone was busy saving someone else. The old woman stood near the wall, holding a faded cloth bag against her chest. She didn't sit. She didn't speak. She didn't step forward. Her coat was thin and worn, the grey fabric dulled by years of washing. Mud clung to the edges of her shoes. Her white hair was pulled back neatly, not a strand out of place. She stood straight, almost stiff, as if afraid that even leaning might get her in trouble. She looked out of place. And in the ER, that was enough. Move. A nurse pushed a stretcher past her, nearly clipping her shoulder. The old woman flinched and pressed herself closer to the wall. "I'm sorry," she whispered. No one responded. A gurney burst through the doors. 12-year-old male. Acute respiratory failure. Blood pressure dropping. "Get him on oxygen, now." The old woman's head lifted instantly. Her eyes locked onto the child on the stretcher. He was small, too small for his age, his face pale beneath the harsh white lights. A breathing tube was rushed into place as his chest struggled to rise. The cloth bag in her hands tightened. She took one step forward. A young doctor turned sharply. His voice was clipped, impatient. "Step back." She froze. "I just wanted to ask," her voice was barely audible, swallowed by the noise, "about the boy." The doctor finally looked at her. Not at her face first. At her clothes. Her shoes. Her bag. "Are you family?" The old woman hesitated. "No, Then you don't belong here." His voice was loud enough for others to hear. "This is an emergency room. Not a waiting area. Not a place to ask questions." A few heads turned. Someone exhaled a quiet laugh. The old woman lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry," she said again. A nurse stepped in beside the doctor, irritation written plainly on her face. "You're blocking the hallway," she said. "People are dying in here." The words landed hard. "I'll move," the old woman said quickly. She turned to step away, but the monitor alarm spiked suddenly. Beep, beep, beep. Pressures crashing. "Prep for intubation." The old woman turned back instinctively. "That child," she said, taking a half step forward. "His blood type." "Stop." The doctor snapped. His patience was gone. "You don't get to speak here." The room quieted just enough for everyone to hear him. "Security," he said sharply. "Get her out." The word hit harder than the shouting. Security. 2 guards appeared from the far end of the hall. You need to leave." One of them reached for her arm. She stiffened. "Please," she said, panic finally creeping into her voice. "Just let me stand here. I won't say anything." The guard tightened his grip. "You were asked to leave." Her cloth bag slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Old papers slid out, yellowed and folded, scattering across the tile. No one bent down to pick them up. "Come on," the guard said. "You're causing a disturbance." "I'm not," she tried to say, but the words tangled. The second guard opened the door. "Out. Now." They pulled her forward. Not violently, but not gently either. She stumbled as she crossed the threshold. The ER doors slid shut behind her with a heavy, final sound. The hallway outside was cold. Quiet. The noise of the emergency room was suddenly muffled, distant, like it belonged to another world. The old woman stood there for a moment, unsteady. Then she lowered herself onto a plastic chair against the wall. Her back remained straight. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. She did not cry. She did not look around for sympathy. She stared at the closed ER doors. Inside, the alarms continued. Beep, beep, beep. A man walking past glanced at her and shook his head. "Some people," he muttered. She didn't react. Her fingers curled slightly, tightening against her palms. In her mind, One thought repeated again and again. Not yet. Not like this. Not yet. The ER doors stayed closed. And no one inside realized that they had just dragged out the one person who could change what happened next. The ER doors stayed closed. Inside, the alarms didn't stop. Beep. 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 His oxygen's not stabilizing. Pressure's still dropping. Where's the blood? A nurse checked the chart again, her jaw tightening. Typo negative, she said. Rare. We're almost out. Call the blood bank, the young doctor snapped. Tell them it's urgent. They already did, another nurse answered. Closest supply is 30 minutes out. 30 minutes. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew what that meant. Outside, in the hallway, the old woman sat perfectly still. The plastic chair was too low for her knees. Her back should have curved with age, but it didn't. She sat straight, her posture calm, deliberate. Her cloth bag lay at her feet, half open. The old papers that had spilled earlier were still scattered on the floor. A few had been kicked aside by passing shoes. She hadn't picked them up. Her eyes never left the ER doors. A security guard lingered nearby, arms crossed. Don't move from here, he said flatly. She nodded once. I won't. Inside the ER, tension thickened. Try another line. It's not holding. Doctor. Damn it, the young doctor muttered under his breath. He pulled off his gloves and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. For the first time since the child arrived, doubt crept into his eyes. We need blood, he said. Now. The attending physician, a man with graying hair and a reputation for calm under pressure, stepped closer to the monitor. Stall as long as you can, he said quietly. We buy time. The nurse hesitated. Doctor, what if we don't have time? The attending didn't answer. The hallway door opened briefly as another stretcher rushed past. Cold air swept out. The old woman felt it on her face. Her fingers twitched. She stood up. The security guard noticed immediately. Sit back down. She didn't argue. But she didn't sit either. I need to speak to someone, she said. Her voice was steady now. Low. Controlled. You already spoke, the guard replied. You were told to leave. I wasn't finished. The guard scoffed. That's not your call. She looked at him, not angrily, not pleadingly. Just calmly. I know that child's blood type, she said. The guard laughed once, short and sharp. Lady, everyone knows the blood type. That doesn't make you special. She didn't respond. Instead, she bent down slowly and picked up one of the papers from the floor. It was old. Yellowed. The edges frayed. She smoothed it carefully against her knee, as if it mattered. Inside, chaos escalated. His heart rate spiking. We're losing him. The attending physician's jaw tightened. Get me options, he said. Anything. A nurse hesitated before speaking again. There was someone outside, she said quietly. The young doctor turned sharply. What? The old woman. She said something about blood type. The young doctor scoffed. Seriously, now's not the time for that. I know, the nurse said. But she said it before we even checked the chart. That gave him pause. Before, he repeated. The nurse nodded. She mentioned rare blood, before we confirmed. Silence, just for a second. The attending physician looked up. Bring her back, he said. The young doctor stared at him. What? Bring her back. The ER doors slid open. The sound spilled into the hallway again. The security guard straightened as the attending physician stepped out. Where is she? The doctor asked. The guard pointed. There. The attending physician's eyes landed on the old woman. And then, he stopped. Completely. Not a slow realization. A full stop. His gaze dropped, not to her face, but to her wrist. The old woman noticed. She followed his eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled her sleeve back. Just enough. The attending physician's breath caught. No, he whispered. The young doctor behind him frowned. What is it? The attending physician took one step closer. Where did you get that? He asked. The old woman didn't answer. She pulled the sleeve back a little more. On her wrist, faded but unmistakable, was an old medical marking. Not a tattoo meant to be seen. A clinical identifier. Outdated. Almost forgotten. The attending physician swallowed hard. That marking, he said quietly, hasn't been used in decades. The hallway seemed to shrink around them. The young doctor's confidence faltered. What does it mean? He asked. The attending physician didn't look at him. He kept staring at the woman's wrist. I haven't seen that since residency, he said. And even then, only once. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. What's going on? He asked. No one answered him. The old woman lowered her sleeve again. She met the attending physician's eyes. Is the child still alive? She asked. The question was simple. Direct. The attending physician nodded slowly. For now. She exhaled, just slightly. Then you still have time, she said. The young doctor scoffed again, though the sound was weaker now. With all due respect, you don't know that. The old woman looked at him. This time, directly. You're wrong, she said. The attending physician felt a chill. How do you know? He asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached down and picked up another paper from the floor. This one had a seal on it. Old. Official. She held it out, but didn't let go. Because, she said, I've been here before. The attending physician stared at the document. His heart began to pound. What, exactly are you saying? He asked. The old woman's voice remained calm. I'm saying, she replied, that the blood you're waiting for isn't coming fast enough. The alarms inside spiked again. Beep, beep, beep. A nurse shouted from inside the ER. Doctor, we're out of time. The attending physician looked from the doors, back to the old woman, then down at her wrist, then at the papers in her hand. His mouth opened. And then, he stopped himself. His face drained of color. He took a step back. No, he said under his breath. No, it can't be. The old woman held his gaze. Her expression didn't change. Doctor, she said softly, you know exactly who I am. The hallway fell completely silent. The alarm screamed again. Beep, beep, beep. We're losing him. A nurse's voice cut through the hallway. Panic crept into every movement now. The ER doors slid open and shut as staff rushed in and out, faces tight, eyes sharp with fear they refused to say out loud. The attending physician didn't move. He stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the old woman's wrist like it was something impossible, something that should not exist anymore. The young doctor broke first. This is ridiculous, he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. We don't have time for. Stop. The attending physician's voice was low, controlled, but it carried weight. Everyone stopped. The young doctor looked at him, confused. Sir. The attending physician swallowed hard. Then he spoke. She's a foundational donor. The hallway went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Even the alarms inside the ER felt distant for a moment, like they belonged to another place. The young doctor blinked. What? The attending physician didn't take his eyes off the woman. A foundational donor, he repeated. A primary source. The security guard shifted uneasily. Source of what? The attending physician finally turned. Blood, he said. Bone marrow. Stem compatibility. Each word landed heavier than the last. The young doctor's face lost its color. That program was shut down, he said. Decades ago. Yes, the attending replied. After it saved hundreds of children. The old woman said nothing. She didn't nod. She didn't confirm. She simply stood there, hands relaxed at her sides, like none of this surprised her. The attending physician stepped closer to her. Your ID marking, he said quietly, was only given to one group of people. He paused. People whose blood profiles were considered irreplaceable. The word echoed in the young doctor's head. Irreplaceable. That's impossible, the young doctor whispered. They said those donors were retired, the attending finished. Not erased. The alarm spiked again. Beep, beep, beep. A nurse burst into the hallway. Doctor, his heart rate is unstable, we don't have minutes anymore. The attending physician didn't look away from the old woman. He asked one question. Are you still eligible? She met his eyes. Yes. One word. No hesitation. The hallway erupted. Prep a donor room. Call transfusion services, now. Clear protocol. The young doctor stepped back as if the floor had shifted beneath him. Wait, he said. You can't just, she's not even registered. The attending physician turned sharply. She's registered in a system you were never trained to see. The young doctor opened his mouth. Then closed it. The security guard took a step back, suddenly unsure of where he should even stand. The nurse who had earlier told the woman she was blocking the hallway stared at the floor. No one spoke to the old woman like she didn't belong anymore. Now they didn't know how to speak to her at all. The attending physician gestured toward the ER. Will you help us? He asked. The old woman looked past him, through the glass, to the boy on the bed. Her voice was steady. I didn't come here to watch, she said. They moved fast. Too fast for questions. Too fast for pride. A nurse rushed ahead to prepare the room. Another ran to call administration. Phones were already ringing, people higher up being pulled out of meetings, out of offices, out of comfort. The young doctor stood frozen near the wall. He watched as the old woman was escorted back toward the ER. Not dragged. Not pushed. Escorted. Carefully. Respectfully. As she passed him, she stopped. Just for a second. She didn't glare. She didn't accuse. She simply looked at him. You were right about one thing, she said quietly. His throat tightened. What? This is an emergency room. Then she continued walking. Inside the ER, the doors closed again. This time, everyone was waiting on her. The attending physician pulled on gloves with shaking hands. Begin donor protocol, he said. The nurse hesitated. Doctor, if this works. He nodded once. If this works, he said, it changes everything. Outside, the hallway filled with administrators. A man in a tailored suit arrived, breathless. Where is she? He demanded. The attending physician looked up. In the ER. The man's face tightened. Do you have any idea who? Yes, the attending physician said. I do. Inside the ER, the machines began to stabilize. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. The alarm slowed. Beep. Beep. The young doctor stared through the glass. His hands trembled. What have we done? He whispered. The attending physician didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the monitors. We'll know soon, he said. Inside the ER, the old woman lay still on the donor bed. Calm. Prepared. Like she had done this before. Because she had. And whether the hospital was ready or not. The next few minutes would decide everything. The alarm slowed. Not stopped. But slowed enough for everyone in the room to breathe again. Beep. Beep. A nurse leaned closer to the monitor, eyes wide. Blood pressures stabilizing. No one cheered. No one smiled. They just stared, afraid that if they reacted too soon, the moment would disappear. The attending physician exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Hold the line, he said quietly. Don't rush anything. Outside the ER, the hallway had filled with people who didn't usually run. Administrators. Department heads. A hospital director in a tailored suit, tie loosened, breath uneven. He stopped when he saw the young doctor standing by the wall. What happened? The director asked. The young doctor didn't answer. He couldn't. The director followed his gaze, to the glass window, to the old woman lying calmly on the donor bed inside the ER. Who is she? The director asked again, slower this time. The attending physician stepped forward. She's the reason this hospital saved hundreds of children before you ever sat in that office. The director went still. You're saying? I'm saying, the attending interrupted, that if she hadn't walked in today, that boy would already be gone. The director swallowed. Inside the ER, the old woman lay motionless. Her breathing was steady. Her face relaxed. She wasn't afraid. She had trusted this place once before. And she was trusting it again. A nurse adjusted the four, hands careful now, almost reverent. I'm sorry, the nurse whispered, not sure why she felt the need to say it. The old woman opened her eyes slightly. Focus on him, she said gently. The nurse nodded, blinking hard. Minutes passed. Then, his responding. The words came soft, almost disbelieving. Another nurse leaned in. Oxygen saturation is climbing. The monitor numbers crept upward. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to hope. The attending physician closed his eyes for a brief moment. Keep going, he said. Outside, the security guard who had dragged the woman out earlier stood near the wall. He took off his cap. He didn't know what to do with his hands. No one looked at him. That somehow felt worse. Finally, the ER doors opened. The attending physician stepped out. The hallway went silent. His stable, he said. The word landed like a weight lifting. Not relief. Not celebration. Just stillness. The hospital director let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Is she? He began. She's fine, the attending said. She always is. The old woman was wheeled out a few minutes later. Not rushed. Not escorted. Just, respectfully accompanied. Every person in the hallway stepped aside without being told. The young doctor stood frozen as she passed him again. This time, he spoke. I was wrong, he said quietly. She stopped. Looked at him. Yes, she replied. That was all. No anger. No forgiveness speech. Just truth. The hospital director stepped forward. We owe you an apology, he said. A public one. The old woman shook her head. I didn't come back for apologies, she said. Then what did you come back for? He asked. She turned her head slightly, looking back through the ER doors, toward the boy. For him, she said. She stood up on her own. No one tried to stop her. As she reached for her cloth bag, a nurse picked it up first and handed it to her with both hands. Thank you, the nurse said. The old woman nodded once. At the doors, she paused. Doctor, she said, addressing the attending physician. Yes. Don't let them forget, she said. What this place is for. He nodded. We won't. She walked out of the hospital alone. No cameras. No applause. Just an old woman disappearing into the afternoon light. Inside, the ER returned to its noise. Stretchers rolled. Monitors beeped. Lives went on. But for everyone who had been there, the silence from earlier stayed. And none of them would ever look at someone the same way again.